Susan Marrow and her friends Kathy Simmons, Harper Langley, and Terrence Reed were on their way to browse an antique store in downtown. They had been planning this trip for weeks and were all excited to see what treasures they would find. As they walked through the door of the store, Susan couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement wash over her. She loved browsing antique stores and finding unique items that she could add to her collection. Kathy was right behind her, eagerly looking at every item on display. Harper, on the other hand, seemed uninterested in anything they saw and kept making sarcastic comments about the prices of the items. Terrence walked silently beside them, his face expressionless as he took in everything around him. As they made their way through the store, Susan noticed a beautiful antique clock sitting on display in one of the corners. She immediately went over to it and started admiring its intricate design. Kathy came over to her side and agreed that it was a work of art. Harper, however, seemed unimpressed by the clock and made a comment about how expensive it must be. Terrence simply nodded and continued walking with them. Susan ignored Harper's comment and turned back to the clock. She couldn't help but wonder where it had come from and who had owned it in the past. As she stood there admiring it, Kathy noticed a small note attached to the base of the clock. Susan read it out loud and was surprised by what it said. "To whoever finds this clock, may you find happiness and love in all that you do." Susan felt a sense of warmth spread through her as she read the message. She couldn't help but feel like finding this clock was meant to be, and that it held some sort of special meaning for them. Kathy agreed with Susan, and they both decided to keep an eye out for anything else in the store that might have a similar message or significance. As they continued browsing, they came across a beautiful antique chest filled with old photographs and letters. Susan was immediately drawn to it and started flipping through the pages of the photos. Kathy came over to her side and started pointing out pictures of their grandparents and other family members. Harper seemed uninterested in the chest and kept making comments about how boring it was. Terrence simply stood there, watching them both as they looked at the old memories. Susan noticed a letter tucked inside one of the photo albums. She read it out loud and was surprised by what it said. "My dearest love, I hope this letter finds you well. I have been thinking about you every day since we last saw each other and can't wait to be reunited again. Until then, know that my heart belongs to you and always will." Susan felt a sense of excitement wash over her as she read the letter. She couldn't help but wonder who had written it and what their relationship was like. Kathy agreed with Susan, and they both decided to keep an eye out for anything else in the store that might have a similar message or significance. As they continued browsing, they came across a beautiful antique mirror sitting on display in one of the corners. Susan immediately went over to it and started admiring its intricate design. Kathy came over to her side and agreed that it was a work of art. Harper, however, seemed unimpressed by the mirror and kept making sarcastic comments about how expensive it must be. Terrence simply nodded and continued walking with them. Susan noticed a small note attached to the back of the mirror. She read it out loud and was surprised by what it said. "To whoever finds this mirror, may you see yourself in all that you do.